Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Just days ago, June 21st, 2025, the world saw something pretty dramatic, didn't it?
Absolutely. Sudden U.S. military strikes against key nuclear sites in Iran.
And the ripples, well, they're already spreading. Geopolitics, energy markets.
You can feel it everywhere, really.
So our mission today is, to help you navigate this complexity. We've gathered a lot of material, expert takes, news reports, official lines.
They're really trying to unpack it all.
Yeah, pulling out the crucial bits. What were the objectives? What's the immediate impact? The escalation risks.
And the bigger picture, too, right? The economic side, the strategic shifts.
Exactly. We want to cut through the noise, give you the essential insights you need to grasp what this all means. Let's dive in.
Sounds good. It's definitely a situation that's, well, still developing fast.
Yeah.
And understanding the why, the claimed outcomes, and, where things might head next, that's vital.
For sure. We need to look at it from multiple angles, bring in those different expert perspectives to build a clearer picture for you. Okay, let's start with the strikes themselves, the specifics. What actually happened?
Right. So it was early Sunday morning, June 21st. The U.S. targeted three main sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. These are Iran's key nuclear spots. Enrichment, conversion, that sort of thing.
And the way they did it wasn't subtle. The weaponry involved tells a story.
No, definitely not subtle. A real demonstration of capability. You had B-2 stealth bombers hitting Fordow with 14 massive ordnance penetrators, MOP.
Bunker busters, the ones designed to go deep underground.
Exactly. The GBU-57 MOPs, they can apparently penetrate 60 meters down, and this is their first time used in combat.
Wow. 60 meters, aimed right at Fordow, the mountain facility.
Precisely. And then for Isfahan, it was Tomahawk missiles, more than 24 fired from U.S. submarines.
So a very deliberate, very powerful message being sent there. Not just hitting targets, but showing how they can hit them.
That brings us to the why. What was the strategic thinking? Ambassador Dennis Ross, for instance, he framed it very clearly. He said the goal was, quote, to ensure that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon option.
Removing the option itself.
Yes. And hitting Fordow was key to that because that facility, buried deep, is seen as preserving Iran's ability to, quote, go for the bomb.
So cripple the program at its most protected point.
That seems to be the logic. Then you have President Trump coming out saying the sites were completely and totally obliterated.
Strong words. Did the Pentagon back that up?
Defense Secretary Hegseth confirmed all our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and achieved the desired effect. He specifically mentioned particular damage at Fordow.
Okay, but then you have the Iranian side.
Right, and this is where it gets interesting. Iranian officials admitted there were hits, yes, but they claimed only superficial damage at Fordow. They even hinted maybe sensitive materials were moved beforehand.
And the IAEA, the International Nuclear Watchdog.
They confirmed no increase in off-site radiation levels, which is good news, suggests no major containment breach.
Okay.
But they did note some localized contamination at Natanz. So damage occurred, but maybe not the obliteration described initially, or at least not everywhere.
So you've got obliterated versus superficial damage versus no widespread radiation. How do we square that? Is it just fog of war, or is there a message in the discrepancy itself?
That's a really short question. It could be a bit of both. Caroline Zier, a national security expert, pointed out this whole operation highlights the U.S. military's unrivaled capabilities. It sends that powerful signal. Targets thought unreachable, like Fordow, can be hit.
So the demonstration of capability might be as important as the actual damage assessment.
Quite possibly. It allows the U.S. to project strength, maybe shape Iran's future calculations, while the differing damage reports let each side manage its own narrative, perhaps avoiding immediate, uncontrolled escalation. It's a way to be forceful, but maybe, just maybe, leave a little room for de-escalation.
A calculated display of power. But power invites reaction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the immediate aftermath, Iran's stance.
Yes. The Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, didn't mince words. He said Iran was invaded and must respond, warned of everlasting consequences.
Strong rhetoric. And you heard calls from hardliners, too.
Oh, yes. Things like hitting U.S. ships in Bahrain, bases in Saudi Arabia, even closing the Strait of Hormuz.
Closing Hormuz. That's always the nuclear option, economically speaking. Huge implications.
Exactly. Jonathan Panikoff thinks retaliation is almost certain. But, he adds a crucial point, the intensity likely depends on how Iran perceives the U.S. attack. He argues that regime survival is the #1 priority for Tehran's leaders. Always is.
Okay, so they see this strike as limited to the nuclear program, not an existential threat.
Then they might opt for a more narrow target set in response, something proportional perhaps, to show resolve without risking all-out war.
Is there a precedent for this? How Iran might react?
Well, people point to the Qasem Soleimani assassination in 2020. There were huge fears of a wider war then. But it didn't happen. Iran launched some missiles at U.S. bases, gave some warning. It was calibrated.
And some experts now think Iran might not even be capable of a major conventional response.
That's a view out there. Some argue their military leadership is decimated, air defense is compromised. They might feel they're in no shape to retaliate head-on conventionally.
But that doesn't mean no response at all.
Absolutely not. If conventional options are weak, the risk of asymmetrical tactics goes up. Terrorism, proxy attacks, things Iran has used before where they can maintain some deniability, that's a serious worry for the region.
And the wider world. How did other countries react? UN, Russia.
China. Pretty much a united call for calm, publicly at least. UN Secretary General Guterres condemned any military escalation, urged maximum restraint.
Standard diplomatic response.
Yes, and Russia and China echoed those concerns. But, and this is important, analysts like Alan Pino and Tuvia Goering suggest neither is likely to step in militarily to seize Iran.
Why not? Aren't they allies?
Allies to a point. But Russia has its own problems, and China prioritizes its own interests, like stable energy supplies and non-proliferation, above getting dragged into a major conflict defending Iran's nuclear program.
So Iran might feel somewhat isolated on the world stage in this specific instance.
It seems that way. It signals a certain pragmatism from Moscow and Beijing when U.S. core interests are perceived to be directly involved. They might condemn, but likely won't intervene forcefully.
Okay, that's the geopolitical fallout. Let's shift to the economic side. Markets don't like uncertainty, especially conflict in the Middle East.
No, they don't. And the initial reaction was textbook. Brent crude jumped. Was it 15%?
15%. WTI crude rose too. All that supply disruption fears, right? Especially Hormuz.
Exactly. That strait is the choke point for about 20% of the world's oil. If that closes, analysts say you could easily see $100 per barrel oil.
A scary thought for consumers everywhere.
It is. But here's where Landon Durrance offers a really interesting, maybe counterintuitive take. He argues that, unlike past flare-ups, these specific strikes haven't fundamentally unsettled markets or threatened supply in a lasting way.
How can that be with a 15% jump?
The jump was real, but maybe short-lived, reflecting initial fear. Durrance's point is about the underlying stability. He credits a combination of things: geopolitical foresight, energy abundance, and a posture of control.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning the U.S. targeted weapons programs, not oil infrastructure. That's key. Plus, the U.S. itself produces a huge amount of oil now. Shale boom. And Saudi Arabia has recovered its opacity after previous attacks. So the overall global energy system is maybe more resilient than it used to be. The geopolitical risk premium might be lower.
So the market distinguishes between different types of military action. That's fascinating.
It seems so, which has implications for investors trying to navigate this.
Right. So what does this mean for investment strategies? Is it time to run for the hills, or are there opportunities?
Well, definitely volatility. But Durrance's perspective suggests maybe not panic. For investors, it might mean focusing on energy companies with strong fundamentals, good balance sheets, maybe those in relatively secure regions like U.S. shale or Canadian oil sands. Think ExxonMobil, Chevron, Pioneer, Continental.
Okay. Energy plays. What about defenses?
Classic safe havens always get a look in during uncertain times. Gold, for instance. Companies like Barrick Gold, Newmont Mining, or defensive sectors like utilities. The XLU fund is an example. Hedges against broader market dips.
Makes sense. Anything more strategic long-term?
Yeah, this could accelerate trends, more investment in diversifying supply chains away from potential flashpoints, maybe more focus on Arctic drilling or African oil fields like Total Energies is involved in. And think about strategic materials. If Iran's nuclear ambitions persist, maybe increased demand for uranium Cameco, uranium energy core, or rare earth metals, crucial for defense tech.
So a balanced approach is needed.
Absolutely. Maybe some allocation to energy, some to gold or commodities, keep a core of defensive stocks. But the key is active monitoring. We're still in the fog of war, as they say. Miscalculation is always possible.
A very useful framework. Okay, let's broaden out again. The really big question. The long game. Will these strikes actually stop Iran's nuclear program for good? Or just make them more determined?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? And experts are divided.
You've got President Trump calling for unconditional surrender, Netanyahu seemingly hinting at regime change.
Right. But then you look at Iran's size. Twice Texas, 3 times Iraq. Regime change from the outside is, well, historically difficult, to put it mildly.
So what are the main arguments about the program itself?
On one side, you have analysts like Matthew Kronig suggesting the program might be effectively finished as a serious near-term threat. He thinks Iran probably won't rebuild immediately. Given the cost and the demonstrated vulnerability, the price might just be too high now.
The setback argument. They've been pushed back years, maybe permanently.
Exactly. But then you have experienced diplomats like Ryan Crocker warning that air power alone rarely eliminates knowledge or determination. His concern is that this could actually deepen Iran's resolve, make acquiring nuclear weapons seem even more essential for their survival, driving it deeper underground.
A dangerous potential outcome.
Very. But amidst the risks, some see strategic opportunities emerging from this.
Like what?
Talk of a new Middle East. With Iran weakened, potentially isolated, could this create space for major diplomatic shifts, like normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel? That's something the U.S. has been pushing for?
A regional realignment.
Potentially. And beyond the reason, this sends a message, doesn't it? A powerful signal, as some put it, to Russia and China. It demonstrates U.S. willingness to use significant force when it feels its core interests are threatened. That could perhaps strengthen the U.S. hand in other arenas, like Ukraine. Shows resolve.
Projecting strength on the global stage. But there's always a but.
Always. Ian Bremmer's caution seems apt here. It's much easier to start wars than to end them.
Meaning this might not be the end of it.
It might just be an opening salvo. The U.S. could get drawn deeper in, more entangled in the region again, despite wanting to pivot away.
And the international law aspect. Attacking nuclear facilities. That's fraud, isn't it?
Extremely. There are Geneva protocols, additional Protocol I, that generally prohibit attacks on nuclear power plants if it could release dangerous forces and harm civilians. But the interpretation gets complex, military necessity, proportionality, and not all states are party to everything.
And the IAEA's position.
They consistently condemn any armed attacks on nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes. They see it as a grave threat to the entire non-proliferation regime. So legally and normatively, it's very contentious territory.
So wrapping this up, we've covered a lot. The military details, the political reactions, the economic ripples, the long-term strategic questions. It's incredibly layered.
It really is. Military, political, economic, even potential humanitarian concerns if things escalate or if there were unintended consequences from the strikes. Understanding these different threads, though, is crucial for anyone trying to make sense of what's happening in the world right now. Hopefully, the insights we've discussed give you, our listeners, a clearer lens to view these high-stakes events.
Definitely. It helps discern the currents shaping global dynamics, energy markets, international relations. It all connects. And it leaves us with a final, perhaps sobering thought to ponder. In this new geopolitical reality, where the line between peace and tragedy, as you said, seems so thin, how do nations balance that pursuit of security against the vital need for stability, especially when the consequences, intended or not, can ripple across the globe in ways we can barely foresee?
A complex question indeed, and one we'll likely be grappling with for some time to come.